So people come here in the back of a lorry or on a boat across the channel as an asylum seeker, and being softies, we say, yeah, okay, all right, you can stay. Now, over 50 people a day come into Britain because they say, oh, my uncle's there, my nan's there, my little kid's there. And so what's really happening is we let people across the channel. It isn't just them that come. Ultimately, their whole families come as well. We must be absolutely mad. In America, what Donald Trump is doing already is deporting people who come into America illegally. And far from being the monster, now over 50% of Britons think Trump is doing the right thing.
There are moments in a nation's political journey so startling, so deeply unsettling, that they shake the foundations of democracy itself. What unfolded in Dublin this week was more than a news cycle moment. It wasn't just a viral clip destined for social media. It was the raw outcry of a nation in pain. A moment that stripped away political theater and forced a sobering question into the open. What is happening to Ireland? The heated confrontation between Nigel Farage and a group of pro-Roma protesters was not simply a disagreement. It wasn't just another argument over Middle Eastern politics. It exposed something far deeper and far more troubling. Before we continue, a quick request. If you find value in this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue.
Being put in 4-star hotels. I see illegal migrants who, by the way, might have escaped a war-torn country, but they ain't got their wife and kids with them. They're in a hotel as well, and suddenly me, a good old British voter, a good old person who hasn't broken the law, feels like a fifth-class citizen. It's not good enough the way I think. I think we're too soft. I think if we made it harder, if you didn't get a hotel and a car and a house and your backside wiped while our own people are struggling, I think that would be a deterrent. Don't you think we're too soft?
It's about fairness. It's simply about fairness. All those arguments that you just made, people are incensed.
Yeah.
That young males who, by the way, throw their iPhones and their passports into the channel, and I filmed this myself being out there on a small boat, they chuck them into the sea at the 12-mile line. Do you know they're given a new iPhone as soon as they get to Dover?
God.
No, I'm not making this up, I promise you. Everything's free. They get, 40 quid a week fag money. The whole thing's unbelievable. So it's about fairness.
What we witnessed became a symbol of a culture unraveling in real time. What drew global attention wasn't the outrage itself, but the silence that followed. Let's be clear about what happened. Nigel Farage, a figure known for controversial positions and blunt language, stood in the heart of Dublin and expressed what many Irish citizens have quietly felt for years, that free speech is under threat, that honest political debate is being crushed by a dangerous mix of radical ideology and institutional fear. And how did the crowd respond? Not with discussion, not with reasoned protest, but with intimidation, threats, and the looming presence of violence.
We do have a border security minister already, who has responsibilities for this sort of stuff. But like I say, it's a clear shift in tone, and that is really, really important. Now, we really do need strong deterrence and clear messages. And sadly, this weak Labour government has got rid of the only deterrent that we actually had in this country, which was Priti Patel's Rwanda plan. Now, sadly, you have people like Kay, who I'm sure is really well-intentioned, but unfortunately, when we say, it's absolutely fine if you come to this country, we'll welcome you with open arms, I think it frankly encourages people to cross the channel and make that dangerous journey. And I think we really need to be clear that if you do come to this country, you will not be welcomed with open arms, you will not be living off the British taxpayer, and that you will be deported.
Okay, he's got a point, hasn't he? The immigration and deportations are two separate issues. We have a Minister for Immigration, and the decisions that he or she makes are things like what visas to approve, what are the skill shortages. But the idea of deportations is something entirely different. This is about removing people who have no right to be here, whether they are failed asylum seekers or their visas have run out. We should separate these issues, shouldn't we?
What we saw was deeply unsettling. It was the visible breakdown of civil society. But what truly shocked people wasn't only the disorder on the streets. It was the deafening silence from Ireland's leadership. Where were the defenders of democratic values? Where were the voices willing to say, we may disagree with Nigel Farage, but he has the right to speak? Where were the Taoiseach, the ministers, the journalists who so often claimed to stand for freedom? Instead, there was nothing, just a wall of silence.
But the really interesting thing and what nobody seems to want to talk about, is what is GDP per capita? What is wealth? How do we measure it by the individual? And once again, it was down. And here's the thing. Since the fourth quarter in 2022, GDP per capita has increased in 2 quarters, but fallen in 6. We are getting poorer. And yet it seems to me the only way we get any GDP growth at all is through mass migration. Why? Because there are more people. So the economy is that little bit bigger, and that's what GDP measures. It measures the size overall of the productive economy. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer that mass migration is making us poorer as a country in every way. Interestingly, since the mass migration experiment began, productivity has fallen as well. And I remember for so many years, people say, look, Nigel, you may be right. You may have your concerns about population growth. You may have your concerns about cultural integration. But hey, they're all coming into work. It's good for the economy. So why don't you shut up and order another pint? Actually, what we've learned is the vast majority of those that have been coming in the last few years don't work at all. And those that do, if they're in low-skilled jobs, overall, are going to cost the economy in the long run.
Not a single word of condemnation from the political elite. Not one clear rejection of calls for violence disguised as ideology. And that silence was deafening, because within it was a message sent not just to Farage, but to every Irish citizen brave enough to speak openly. You are on your own. Think about that. Imagine being a parent in Dublin, watching your neighborhood become unfamiliar. Imagine being a teacher unsure what topics are still allowed in the classroom, or a student watching your university turn into a stage for censorship and political intimidation.
We'll see it happen across country after country after country. And I really believe that Westminster, the intellectuals, the liberal elites just don't get it. They still are trying to brush under the carpet the issue of immigration. You know, just for example, 2.5 million more cars on our roads in the last 5 years. You haven't got to be Einstein to work out that if your population is rising between 300 and 500,000 every year, there are going to be more cars on the motorway. It doesn't need much to work out. That's increased pressure on social services. The concerns the British people have on this issue are not based on dislikes or hatreds on racism. They're based, I think, on plain common sense that we need to get a grip, we need to get control. So I don't see this issue going away any time soon.
Imagine this. A British political figure, whether you respect him or despise him, comes close to being attacked in your capital city, and no one in power says a word. This goes far beyond immigration. It strikes at the soul of Ireland itself. We are watching a nation slowly drift away from the values that once defined it: community, compassion, independent thought, and courage. In their place, we see hollow slogans, fear-driven narratives, and rigid tribalism. And inside the halls of power, silence. Because stopping this would require leaders to confront uncomfortable truths that don't fit neatly into press releases or party talking points.
What was the point in leaving the EU and all that involved if we don't leave the ECHR? That's like halfway hotel, isn't it? It's pointless. Sharon in Wigan, for you, Nigel, talk. Please ask Nigel how we get rid of the loonies out before they ruin our UK. I'm having sleepless nights worrying about bills, and all I see is illegal young men coming from dangerous countries being treated better than I am. There you are.
Sharon, the bad news is it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse.
Let's confront a hard reality. The streets are becoming increasingly radicalized under the banner of activism. We've reached a point where many protests are no longer rooted in justice. They are driven by the pursuit of power. And that power is now held by individuals who show little respect for Ireland's history, its people, or its laws. Their goal isn't equality or dialogue. It's dominance and the suppression of dissent. Farage may have been the target this time, but don't be mistaken. The real objective is the erosion of Ireland's freedom. So we must ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did a country that fought so fiercely for independence become a place where speaking out can put you in danger?
The reason we voted Brexit and the reason Penny's party got the massive majority in 2019 is we voted to reduce the numbers coming in, and the numbers have exploded I mean, honestly, unbelievable. 1 in 30 people walking on the street out there has come in the last 2 years alone.
How did we move from the poetry of Yeats and the courage of Michael Collins to viral clips of masked agitators calling for chaos? The painful truth is that the political class enabled this decline through appeasement, cowardice, and an obsession with political correctness that has now become cultural surrender. And it's the working class, everyday people, who are paying the price. While politicians sip lattes in Leinster House and release polished statements about inclusivity, real families face real fear. Communities are silenced, expected to tolerate rising crime, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and instability, all under the banner of diversity. And when they speak out, they're labeled extremists.
The answer is we have to have net migration at zero. It means skilled workers can come, we can go work abroad, we have to have a freeze on the total numbers of those coming in.
The term far right has become less about identifying true extremism and more about silencing dissent. It's used against Dublin residents who question unchecked mass migration. It's used against whistleblowers who expose uncomfortable truths about asylum-related crime. And now it's being aimed at Nigel Farage, a man who, regardless of opinion, stood firm in the face of hostility and defended core democratic values. You don't have to like him. You don't have to agree with him. But if you believe in free speech, democracy, and the rule of law, what happened in Dublin should deeply concern you, because this isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. It's about whether we are willing to defend the values that define our society, not from outside threats, but from forces within. And here is the most heartbreaking truth. Millions of Irish citizens feel this same unease. They see what's unfolding. They feel tension creeping into their communities. They hear the stories the media ignores. They know something is wrong, but they are afraid to speak. And who can blame them when public figures are harassed and applauded against? When government leaders stay silent while extremists threaten violence? When institutions choose comfort over truth? This is how freedom disappears, not with noise, but with silence. Yet it doesn't have to end this way. Ireland is still a proud nation, filled with courageous people. This moment can become a turning point if enough voices rise together. Not for Farage, not for any political party, but for Ireland itself. The real question isn't whether you agree with Nigel Farage. It's whether you believe in the right to speak freely, even when it's unpopular. Whether violence and intimidation must never prevail. Whether government has a duty not only to protect citizens physically, but to defend their dignity, their intellect, and their spirit, that if you believe that, then now is the time to speak. The silence from Dublin's leadership wasn't just weakness. It was betrayal. A betrayal of every Irish citizen who still believes in truth, integrity, and democracy. If we don't push back now, if we don't demand better, the future will belong to the mob. And when that happens, we'll have no one to blame but ourselves. If you believe this message matters, if you believe Ireland deserves better, subscribe, share, and let your voice rise above the silence. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.